Why is vaccine injury still so hard to talk about? Canadian filmmaker Dean Rainey asked that very question, and he set out to answer it in this bold new documentary called Why Can't We Talk About This? In this episode, we'll explore the shocking real-life story of Michael, the man who inspired this film, and the censorship he faced while trying to produce and release this powerful documentary. Welcome to Navigating the Unknown with Nikki, a podcast in collaboration with React 19. Together we share stories, support, and hope for those living with vaccine injury and chronic conditions.
Hey Dean, it's Michael, how are you? I'm dealing with these spinal lesions and, I'm trying to go down the rabbit hole to figure out what's happening to me, and there's so little information out there about the vaccines and COVID and long COVID, and man, I'm just so tired all the time, and I'm wondering if you'd be interested in doing a documentary on what's happening to me right now. Give me a call, we can talk about this.
If anyone chooses to not get vaccinated, there will be consequences.
Ignore nasty, ignore anti-maskers, take that shot.
The average doctor that prescribed these vaccines, they actually made a lot of money.
And those who questioned and challenged the narrative were portrayed as dangerous and spreading disinformation.
They don't understand why it's happening. I think they do. They just don't want to admit it.
Welcome back to Navigating the Unknown with Nikki. I'm your host, Nikki, and today I'm joined with Canadian filmmaker Dean Rainey. Dean has spent his career producing films for major networks like National Geographic, CNN, Discovery Channel, and a lot more. But his most recent project is deeply personal and has left a lasting impression on him through what he's discovered and experienced during its creation. This documentary, Why Can't We Talk About This?, follows the story of Michael. He's a man from Dean's own community who has been paralyzed after his fourth mRNA COVID shot. What began as one man's struggle turned into a deeper investigation into the medical neglect, the censorship, and the deafening silence surrounding vaccine injury and the real truth. So thank you, Dean, for coming on here and sharing about this new documentary, because it is an amazing documentary. I've gotten a chance to watch it myself, and it is very, very powerful. And I want to talk a little bit more about that and you. So starting off, tell us about yourself and what led you to take on this topic.
So I have a production company here in Canada. Because of the internet, we are in a small town outside of the big city center. And when the pandemic hit, well, my business was definitely affected. In Canada, I don't know if you know, but we had a lot of lockdowns. A lot of limitations. And then from there, we had, when the vaccine came on, there were mandates and passports. Now, one interesting thing about myself is that I actually was living in Hong Kong during the first pandemic 22 years ago with SARS there. I was ground zero and I was living there. And so I was really paying attention to what we were doing here because it was really different. It was very, very different than how we had handled it in Hong Kong. And so I was really paying attention. It really shocked me sort of what our country was doing. And so I became very suspect immediately on the things they were telling us, no health advice, like no, go outside, get some sunshine, have some vitamin E, get some exercise. No, it was all stay at home and eat really bad takeout food. And, you can get cannabis and alcohol delivered right to your home. We were locking off parks and all of that. So as we moved through it, I was really skeptical. And then I was getting really affected because into 2022, we were still having lockdowns. And I don't think a lot of people here, we all say, okay, 2 weeks, flatten the curve. We'll try, we'll do something. But that was futile and we could see this. But our government just kept doubling down on these lockdowns. And then when they got to the passports and the mandates, wow, that was something that I was just really blown away by. And so I was really watching this. And, I'm not very political. Our production company, we make cooking shows, we make talent search shows, we do corporate videos. But in my personal life, I do follow geopolitics and finance and economics and whatnot. So I had an interest in this. And when these passports came on and mandates for vaccines, I was really blown away. Now, full disclosure, I'm vaccinated. I took the vaccine too, even though I was skeptical and suspect. It was a decision that we made. My business was in shambles because of lockdown, so I didn't want to lose any more work. I have a 95-year-old grandmother still with us. I knew my family were very pro-vaccine. My wife at that point was really like, well, maybe we should do this. Now, we dragged our heels and we were the last people, but we still thought we were doing the right thing. And as we were sort of seeing the rollout afterwards, I thought something's up. Something's really up with these vaccines. And that's when there was a man in my town called Michael, and we were colleagues, acquaintances, because he's a filmmaker, musician, just like me. And so we've always stayed in touch. And I could see on his social media that he was very pro-vaccine. He just wanted everybody to do the right thing and follow what the government was saying, and he was calling people out. And, I had some time for him because he's kind of funny, but I was like, I think this is not going to end the way we kind of want. Because by 2022, when we had the truckers convoy and our government basically crapping on anybody who spoke out and the division that they brought to our society, I was like out. I was like out of that. Like, no, something's up. This is not right. We're beyond the pale here on how our country's handling this, our government.
And what was, you mentioned the passports. What did you all, as far as in Canada, what were the passports that
If
you're talking
you
about?
if you wanted to do anything, pretty much, you had to provide proof of vaccination. So my son, he wanted to play hockey. Now, children were kind of late. They came in late with the vaccines, but parents who wanted to watch, you had to get into the arena. You had to show a piece of paper that says, I have the magic shot. I can get in here. And I have a number of friends that are freedom people. And I had a lot of, they're brave. They're very brave. They're standing up. I was really careful not to shame anybody. I mean, I had to make my personal choice with my wife as to what we wanted to do. But yeah, you wanted to get on a plane, a train, go to a restaurant, go to a movie theater, play hockey, do anything public, you had to show this passport. And it was shocking.
It is.
So, but with my friend Michael, I started to notice that his social media posts changed. He was starting to be a little bit public about dealing with some health issues. And the way he was describing these health issues, because I had now been diving into what's going on with the vaccine and what are other people experiencing. So I was kind of aware that there were some things that were not right with these things. And what he was saying lined up with that. But he was very careful not to socially come out and say, oh, I'm vaccine injured. No, he was saying, I'm having a neurological event. I'm low energy. Something's not right with me. And his circle, I think, because they wouldn't have been able to process that information. But I kind of was suspect. I think there's something here. Poor guy. Until one day he reached out and he told me. And I don't think he knew where I was, although maybe in social media we'd had a couple of bumping heads over the convoy or whatnot, poking at each other. But he reached out and he said, look, I've been down the rabbit hole. I've either got long COVID, a vaccine injury, or both, or something. I don't know. But do you want to come talk to me, film an interview with me, and see if there's a story here? And I was like, wow, okay, even though I was skeptical of the vaccines and had read a lot and was wondering about a lot of things, it's still a heavy subject to pick up, especially in my social circle were, I mean, I can't discuss this with anybody at the time anyways. There's very few people that were on side. Some of the people that I knew that had not taken the vaccines, I could discuss it with them, but, they're not really filmmakers or whatnot. So I was really hesitant. I agreed, okay, let's go. And we went and we did that first interview with him, just me and my assistant editor here, Gus, and our eyes were wide open when we heard the full story from him.
Watching the film and his story, there are so many similarities between myself, my injury, and so many people that I have met along the way. A lot of neurological issues that, they've addressed that there are some concerns with heart issues, things like that, but they are not even coming close to admitting the neurological problems, and that seems to be one of the biggest factors among all of us. And so, for those that have not watched the film, give us kind of a brief summary of what's happened to Michael. And like, this was after his fourth mRNA vaccine. So, what's kind of played out with his story?
So as we explore in the film, after his fourth shot, that's right, about 36 hours later, he started to get tingling, losing feeling, the ability to walk. A couple days after that, he blacks out while driving, and he goes to his doctor, and the doctor says, okay, don't take any more shots. He's like, okay, that's great. After the fourth one, all right. And they have him checked out for everything that they can, and he just starts deteriorating, losing his ability to walk, to use his hands, everything. So the film follows his medical journey as he goes through the Canadian medical system here. We're known for our universal health care, which, there's good and bad to universal health care. And unfortunately, Michael's experiencing the bad part of it. And really what's happening is he doesn't fit in any box. It's idiopathic is what they say, which basically means they've never seen it before. They don't know what this is. So if no one can agree on what it is or how it's happened, they can't treat it. And when you have to allocate and be fair with all the resources, the health resources, it means that if you don't fit in the box, there's nothing they can do for you. So he's really in limbo now. So the film follows him through the medical system as he tries to first he's got to get acknowledged, right, that something's happened to him. And that is a struggle. Many of the doctors will say off the record, yeah, we think this more than likely was caused by the vaccine, but we can't put it in your charts. And when I hear that and see that as I'm following, I'm like, whoa, something is not right here. This doesn't make any sense to me as a Canadian, as a human being, understanding our health system. What's going
Yeah,
on here?
it even happened, those things right there. I can't tell you how many times that I had a doctor off record tell me, yeah, this is definitely the vaccine. I've seen things, but when I go back and read the notes, they they at least put it, but they put it in the subjective part, meaning patient stated, so they don't have to state it.
That's exactly what happened to Michael.
Yes.
He thought he had a doctor on record saying it, and he called him on it and said, and checked the chart, and it was like, no, patient thinks they have a vaccine injury.
That's how they get around it, with reporting your actual history without them having to validate it.
So we did the interview with Michael, and we kind of sat on it because, well, it was really hard to get any doctors to talk to us. No one was going to, if they're not going to go on the record and tell Michael what's happening, they're certainly not going to talk to me. And as many doctors as I tried to reach out who were around Michael and dealt with Michael, they were, sympathetic, but they just weren't willing to come on camera. So I really thought maybe I don't have anything here. I just have Michael's interview. That's it. I'm kind of at a dead end. And then all of a sudden I was following a YouTuber that I follow. He's a Canadian. He's based out of the US now, Viva Free. And he had on a woman from Northern Ontario, which is the same province as us. Her name's Kayla Pollock. She had the exact same experience as Michael. Fourth shot, 30 some odd hours afterwards, the same experience. Now she's paralyzed in a chair. And I thought, what are the odds that I'm going to find two identical stories? Because at this time, I was hearing nothing. It was really just like, because there's no mainstream press. So it was only if you kind of knew somebody that was going on, would you be able to find, or little discoveries like this podcast. And so I thought, well, this woman needs to hear Michael's story so she knows she's not alone. And also there's power in numbers. And if I can get her in the documentary, I'll have more ammo, so to speak, to hit this issue with. So I took the footage and we uploaded it to YouTube, and I kept it unlisted, wasn't public. I was just sending it to one person. I hadn't edited it or anything. Now, at this time, I have a young person working for me as an editor, and, he's tuned into all the social media. And there's been a lot of talk about online censorship, shadow banning, all of that, but it never hit home. So he kind of wasn't sure how much is legit and how much isn't. When we tried to send this footage, well, I uploaded it. Within 5 minutes, the video was taken down, and I had a medical misinformation strike on my channel and a warning that if I get 2 more, they're going to take my channel away.
Crazy.
Well, our eyes were opened because here we are in small town, rural Canada, and somebody still needed to shut down our message. So then we kind of
Right.
got buy-in from the rest of my team. We're like, okay, where there's smoke, there's fire. We've got to go at that. So we just started digging and digging until we could somehow, through people and recommendations, meet some doctors and some scientists who would speak on camera and who just did a phenomenal job of laying out what all the issues are and the science behind all of this.
So, when you started to dive into that aspect, beyond Michael's story, talking to the doctors, these other people, and your own research, what are some other broader topics that this film touches on and discusses that you might have been surprised at finding out yourself?
I knew that there was probably an issue with the vaccines and the science of the vaccines. And so I did an interview with Dr. Stephen Pellich out of the University of British Columbia, and he explained the technology perfectly in layman's terms so I could understand. And so finally I could actually grasp, okay, wow, these aren't like traditional vaccines. This is not a dormant version of the virus that my body can handle and that my body will just look at and then try to figure out how to attack that. No, this is like gene therapy going into my genes, telling my cells to create the spike protein in order to impersonate the virus to attack itself. Like, wow, when I saw the science and it made sense, and the other uses for these mRNA vaccines, as protein blockers, but now we're asking it to make the protein. I was like, wow, this is wild that this is happening so quick without any data, without any research, without any real clinical studies. This was shocking. And then I discovered Dr. David Speecher, who found the contamination and the DNA and the SV40, which basically just blew the lid off the whole manufacturing process. Because, I'm not a scientist. I can only speak as what I found in the film as a filmmaker. But wow, like we know traditional vaccines are very difficult to make and they take a lot of time. And same with these mRNA vaccines. It was a rush job, and everybody knows it was a rush job. And our politicians came out and said, yeah, this is a rush job. And nobody questioned and nobody doubted. So that blew it off for me. It was like, whoa, what is going on here? Okay, we've got questionable experimental technology. We've got a rushed, kind of sloppy manufacturing process. What else could there be? Then we have our politicians on the television every day giving medical advice. That blew me away too, right? Like I couldn't tell you, hey, take this shot, take this supplement, do anything. Or I couldn't give you legal advice either. How can these politicians be out there giving medical advice? They don't know anybody's medical history. It was shocking. And then I met a personal injury lawyer who basically discovered that our vaccine injury support program, which they created during all of this because they knew there was going to be an issue, I'd met her and we found out that there is chaos in a broken system of support for these people. And that just blew my mind. I mean, I guess I really wasn't surprised. Okay, another government program that's not really working for the people, by the people. But it was disheartening because A, they knew there's a problem with these vaccines enough to bring in a program. B, the program was completely overwhelmed because of the amount of people applying to it. And then C, it's outsourced to an accounting firm with no, qualifications in that, no oversight. We don't know who these people are that are running this. And they were handed like $60-70 million. And so far they've handed out $16 million to victims. And actually, one encouraging thing from our film is that we kind of broke that story in our film. And now the national news has picked that up and is running with it. So that is encouraging. They're still saying, oh, it's a small part of the population that are affected by these. But, look at this mess that this program is. But at least, we're getting people to talk about this.
Yeah, and I saw that the vaccine safety program, that's the name of it. In the US, we have the a program as well, CICP, and it's its own entity for people that can apply to it for emergency vaccines. There's another program for routine vaccines, but specifically our CICP that we can apply to as Americans is just as much a failure. You can pretty much have the right to apply to it and be denied. I mean, it is pretty much, I can't remember the statistics now, but it's between 95 and 98% that you will get rejected. And any way that they can link it in their mind to a previous condition or happenstance, no correlation, they will do it. We even had one of the main people that applied to it that was diagnosed by our own government with a vaccine injury. And then the government vaccine compensation program said, no, it's not a vaccine injury. Well, you just conflicted against your answers. You're both the government. So it's an insane thing. And it is horrible to hear that other countries are not at a better state. And so I was watching that. It's nice that they have a program, but obviously it's failing miserably. And these people can't get compensation or help with their medical bills or anything that they need now.
Yeah,
So,
and it's frustrating because there was no shortage of billions of dollars to get people to take these shots. How can
yeah.
that be? Billions and billions was put into the marketing, the
Mhm.
messaging, the incentives, the passports, the app to follow everybody and trace who's vaccinated and who's not. Billions and no question. And yet,
Right.
when these people do what they're told was the right thing to do, and then they have the negative consequences, it's like, well, there's always side effects. Bah, bah, bah. And it's just unbelievable.
And like you said, there was allocated money towards it right now, just like ours. I mean, our own pharmaceutical companies, yeah, we can't go after them, but they are taxed a certain rate on each vaccine that they sell. And that percentage goes into this fund to help people that are having side effects. And we're not seeing it. They're obviously having the money set aside for it. It's there. It's not paid by taxpayers, so people shouldn't be upset. It is there by pharmaceutical companies paying it, and we don't have access to it because the selection process is insane. And it sounds like that's exactly what you all are dealing with in Canada. So, with the pushback, the censorship, you mentioned putting up that video and it was private and you got warnings from it immediately. That was one of my things when I came from a healthcare background. I thought these organizations, yeah, you got some crooked people, but overall, they were going to be there to help us if we needed it. But when I posted videos sharing my story and I had the same thing happen, like on Facebook or in other social media platforms, warning me for community violations against, standards and stuff, I started to realize that there was a lot more going on and there was a lot of things pushing against this. And so when you started delving into all this, obviously you had that issue, and you mentioned the doctors, talking about how they were scared to say it. So let's start with the doctors. Why were they afraid to say anything? Because I'm pretty sure it's similar to what's going on here.
Yeah, well, in our province, Ontario, the Ontario College of Physicians and Surgeons was just point blank saying you cannot be critical of the vaccines, you cannot promote ivermectin, and you cannot be critical of even lockdowns. And I don't even know where that comes from. I have no idea how you can be so absolute on messaging where all critical thinking or discourse is gone. That's not scientific to me at all on any level. And so that shocked me. And in my film, I do try to reach out to the College of Physicians because I really was like kind of being naive saying, this has got to be a misunderstanding. So, I'm all these doctors being suspended because they're questioning things. I must not be getting what you're saying. Can you just explain? And they would not say anything to me, of course. I don't know where it comes from. Have they just gotten in too deep that they can't get out now and it's just too embarrassing, maybe liability, what it is, I don't know. We're also, I believe, in a culture of double down, especially in our government and politicians. When people get caught doing something, they don't go, oh, you know what, I messed up, you're right, I'm sorry. No, they go, no, 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 we're doubling down, we're going to make it that. We had 9 years of government rule of a political party that just doubled down. So that culture has to be broken up, because as a society, we're just not going to learn anything. We're not going to get better. We're not going to evolve. So it took a few brave doctors. Dr. Chris Shoemaker stood up and came and spoke on camera. But at that point, he'd lost his license and he'd been reprimanded and was close to retirement. So we're really appreciative to doctors like him to stand up and to speak truth to power here, how simple that is. But there's great stigma with this, and there's great shaming with this. There are, I spoke to some doctors, there's like holistic doctors who are even pro-vaccine, surprisingly, like that they just hopped on the bandwagon and went, and that shocked a lot of other doctors and science. Like, it was just, I'm not sure what happened. I know that there's probably great trauma during those 4 years. Everybody on some level experienced something, and that has sort of distorted their common sense, their rationality. I don't know. And now they find themselves in a position they can't get out of, maybe talk their way out of or whatnot. So we have to work through all of that.
We saw a lot of doctors losing their license, being questioned with medical boards. I knew somebody that was in medical school during the pandemic, and they got an email warning them that if they were to talk negatively about the vaccine in any way, or would it be anything that would be misinformation, that they run the risk of, after they graduate, sitting before the board, not getting their license to practice as a doctor. So doctors were hesitant. This is their livelihood, and so I can understand from a personal human basis being resistant to talk about it and just following suit about what you're told to do to protect that financial stability that you need. So tell me about, we had talked in a separate call about the actual censorship that you all experienced personally in Canada with social media, such as Facebook, and sharing even just news articles that are out there about just sharing a link to it. Explain what exactly that is, because that's an extreme thing that we saw some when we would share journal articles and newspapers where they would mark it as misinformation and stuff like that and just take the post down. But explain how it might be a little bit stricter there.
Yeah, so this is something that even a lot of Canadians don't understand. We have a bill that is the Online News Act bill. And essentially what happened was, during the pandemic, our Liberal government decided, well, first you have to understand that Canada's a very small country, right? Our population is 40 million, and you guys are 400 million, so we're a tenth the size of you population-wise. But we're not very self-aware of where we fit in. We think we're bigger than we kind of are. We see everything you guys have, and we want the same thing, but we don't have the population base to sort of support it. Culturally, also, we always watch your TV and your sports, and we get your news and everything, and it's a real blurry line between the two cultures, right? You're the big elephant in the room. So there's always a constant discussion in our history about maintaining our culture and maintaining our industries and everything. So this is either a move of brilliance or incompetence, but whatever, it worked out. So they introduced this bill, and now there was plenty of research and there was plenty of warnings that it wasn't going to go the way they thought it would go. But the Liberals essentially said, okay, Facebook, Google, X, all these American platforms are making money off of sharing news articles that Canadian journalists and newspaper legacy media outlets are making and creating. So what should happen is Google, Facebook, and X, and all these social media platforms should pay into a fund, should pay every time an article is shared, so that we can continue to support our local news, right? Now that sounds great at first, but then if you think about it, it's kind of like if you own a billboard and I own a restaurant. And every time somebody drives past your billboard and comes to my restaurant, you have to pay me. These platforms, they push the people into these. They get the news read. And every news article online has a little share this on Facebook button, or it did, right? Like that is how it's getting out there. And so what happened is they tried to call these big platforms bluff and said, okay, well, you're going to pay into this big fund, hundreds of millions of dollars in order to share these. And then Facebook said, well, no, we're not, because we're just the billboard. We're just telling you where to go. They're still getting the traffic. And so they said, okay, well, if you're not going to pay into this fund, then you're going to have to, we're going to block it. Like you're not going to be able to share it. So Facebook said, sure, fine. You're Canada. You're not significant at all. You're just a small fraction of the people that we serve. So that's fine. So we can no longer share news articles online. So it's very hard to have any discussion online. I can't say to you on Facebook, hey, this is actually, your post is wrong because there's another article with the data in it. Here's the article. No, I can maybe try to take a photo of it and share the photo. So what happens is now traffic drops on all our local media because you can't get there. You've got to remember to go right to that one paper and search the paper. The Facebook algorithm was always serving me up relevant news, and then I could go to where I wanted to. But now I have to actively search it out, and I just won't. And I'm more apt to check out American stuff now. So then what happens is our own media starts to suffer financially. So then the government says, okay, well, now we've got to help you because Facebook's not paying into this fund. Your traffic's down because they're not sharing. We will now subsidize you every year. Well, guess what? Now our media is subsidized by the government. Are you going to be critical of the hand that that is responsible for keeping you afloat and in business? No, you're not. So even though it's not like direct propaganda, of course it is. It's indirect control. So it's brilliant on the part of the media because most Canadians just go, oh, Facebook's so evil, won't let us share our news. And it's like, no, actually, it's the legislation that they brought in that made this perfectly, like, so for 3 years, we've not been able to have any public discussion about anything. You know, you can go and search it out in groups, I guess, with your own people, but then that puts everybody in silos. The beautiful thing of X and Facebook is that you can, with your friend circle, get outside your silo a little bit more. There's a better chance, but that's all gone now.
That is absolutely crazy. We think, yeah, we're censored, especially during 21, 22 were the worst. 23 on out has slowly improved, especially in the last year, as far as censorship on social media, about sharing articles and stuff like that. But to think that you can't even share an article if it was anti-vax or pro-vax or anything.
I can't even share the sports scores.
I mean, that is crazy. Absolutely insane. It's like you're taking away knowledge and access to knowledge that people readily have anywhere else. Well, here they do, by not being able to have people share those links. And so, like, if you were to try to post that, a link to a news article or something, what would happen?
It just disappears.
Just
Maybe
disappears.
you might get a warning saying, because of the Online News Act, you're not allowed to share newspaper articles. And so it just disappears. Yeah, we've tried everything. Everybody's, human beings are, they try to get around things, right? So, you take photos of it. You can post that because that has no connection or any link. But, what am I going to do? If I take a photo, it's mostly the headline, and the headlines are always misleading.
And you still got to search it up and find that article. And even now, algorithms and AI technology are getting better. And so eventually it'll come to the point where they're recognizing things within a photo, which they already do with AI, and they'll start dinging you for taking screenshots. And so it is crazy to think of that level of censorship, because I was completely unaware of it, that was happening.
And I do want to say one more thing about censorship, because you said, the censorship's getting better. And I would argue be very careful, because the censorship's not getting better. It's subject specific. So, yes.
You are correct there.
Now my film can go on YouTube because they got what they wanted. They wanted everybody to take the shot. So for 2 years, it couldn't be on while they needed to get done what was getting done. And now it's okay. They've done it. They can move on. You can share that now. When Russia invaded Ukraine, anything that was critical of the main narrative, taken down. Anything pro-Russian, taken down. And that's still censorship. I don't care where you fall on the issue, it's still censorship. So it just depends on what the next topic is that they need to protect and control the narrative. And you will see your censorship come right back.
You are correct on that. Very much so. I know I'm personally in a small group of us, 5 or 6. We're actually in a lawsuit now suing our government and certain individuals because they limited, in America, we have, the First Amendment right to free speech. And we're suing the government because, yes, social media did it to us, but it was the government that was telling them to and dictating what they did. And so they just followed suit. And so we're in an actual lawsuit right now, with that. I know things have gotten less extreme and they had talked about, is this still valid and things like that. And in our opinion and our approach, yes, it is, because that happened. It's going to happen again. It's going to continue to happen. And just like you said, it just depends on the topic.
And you've got that beautiful Constitution, man. I tell you, we do not have that. We are under the illusion that we do have freedom of speech, but we do not. And it is so fundamental to your society and your country. It's a beautiful piece of work, and it's wonderful that you do have that.
It is. And hopefully the courts see the aspects whenever we are violated in these rights, because our own government tries to do that. And so within that, our judicial system, we're hoping, can pull through and create that checks and balances that we're supposed to have as an organization of our government. So with the film, what was your ultimate goal? What do you hope to do with this documentary? And, is it going to provoke change? What's the goals of it?
Well, number one, I think, is to just start that conversation, because there are so many people like yourself, you're just suffering in silence. And the stigma that seems to be attached to vaccines right now, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that we should be able to talk about this, and I think we'll be able to better understand and help everybody that needs the help. First, we've got to acknowledge them. And so I hope this film is just like a good primer. I've been told it's a pretty good primer. If you want to know all the big issues involved in this large issue, this film sort of sets it up for you, and then you can go from there. It doesn't answer every question, and I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm just trying to show you what I found and the people I met and what I learned, and you can decide for yourself. But I really hope that it gets rid of the stigma attached around this issue of vaccine injuries so we can talk about it. Then I hope that these people get the help that they need, because they need to. They just were doing what they were told was the right thing to do, and we cannot let them fall through the cracks. And stop the shots. Stop these particular shots, because we need more research. We need more data. We need to really look at these. It's not all anti-vax. It's not everything, but there's no reason why we can't question these mRNA vaccines. And so that's what I'm hoping. Now, we're getting pushback because I'm immediately pigeonholed as anti-vax, anti-science. Okay, but the best compliment I get is when people who were either on the other side or on the fence come and watch the film. They go, wow, that wasn't crazy. You weren't talking about wild things. That actually makes a lot of sense. And I do remember all that happening at the time. I just didn't put it all together to understand what was happening. But now I do, and I can think about this, and we can talk about it. So that's just what I want. I wanted to get the science right, because I think that's so important. I don't want to get emotional about it all and just try to, feelings. I want to understand what's technology and what's this doing. And I think we touch on that, and we touch on Michael. It's a very personal story about Michael, too, that I think a lot of people can relate to. There's that tendency to want to just make it a big issue, big movie, get into everything. And I couldn't. I just had to keep coming back to Michael, or I'd never finish it, So right now we're out there, we're trying to get it shown. Some organizations have stepped up and partnered with us because we are getting pushback. Theaters don't want to host it. They don't want to rent to us. Some churches have said, this is a very controversial topic. It doesn't align with our values. And I'm like, really? I think God loves the vaccine injured too. I don't understand what's so problematic about this
Right.
topic or this film, but we're making strides. We are making through the work you're doing, the podcast, just talking about it. I know it gets exhausting. I know you feel like how much more do I have to talk about this? But you have to keep going. You will hit that tipping point, and the media will come back to it. I promise you. They have a very short memory, and they will soon come back, and they will report on it in a third party voice saying, hey, look at what happened over here, even ignoring that they were a part of it all, but they
Right.
will come back to it, and that's what we just hope. But we've also got to start talking to our elected officials, because action needs to be taken at this point now. So if you are, able to join us at some of our screenings, please come and see us. We have some of the doctors there. We do Q&As. I think getting together for a film like this and having community is very important. But if you
And you
can't,
said join you at these. Are you talking, do you do them like virtually as well? Host them? Is that?
I think we're going to try to do that. Maybe come in the fall time, September, we're going to do a virtual live. We'll have some doctors on. We'll take questions, but we do physical screenings. But the film is available right now by donation on our website, raineymedia.com. And so, I make my living making movies, so I do have to pay the bills. And we had no sponsorship for this. I had no funding. I couldn't go get an arts grant for this one. It cost me about $40,000 to make, and we're trying to just sort of pay for itself here, so that I can, stay in business. And also it takes a lot of work to, come on podcasts and talk to people and promote it and everything. So just making sure that I'm still in a position to be able to keep telling these stories. And then once we cover the budget, which is about $40K, we'll be profit sharing with Michael to sort of help him get some extra help as well.
It's amazing. And yes, I will put the link in the description, the raineymedia.com, so you'll be able to watch the movie there. Donate, help support this, and you are absolutely correct. People like you use your skills, your talents, but you're also using your financial resources, you're sacrificing. And for that, we definitely thank you and appreciate that, because to us, we feel like we're nobodies. We don't have people supporting us. So when people like yourself step up and they give us a bigger platform and a voice in the way that you're doing it, is amazing. And so, not only supporting the vaccine injured personally, but supporting people like yourself in projects like this to be able to make them happen and continue to do more is very crucial. So if you're able to donate in any way, absolutely check out that website, link in the description. And so, in ending, after you did this documentary, you went through, you've met Michael, there are thousands and thousands of people across Canada, the US, other countries that have experienced vaccine injury. So what would your advice be after learning and seeing this firsthand? What would your advice be to those out there like Michael after doing this?
Guess I would just say that you just know that you're not alone. Just know that there are many like you, and that, there are people like me that are trying to help to get the message out there, and that you can be brave and you can start talking about this. And yeah, I just want to let you know that you're being heard.
It's a small thing, but it is very validating. I know when I was getting censored on social media, especially that first year or two, just the ability to be like, hey, my life, my story is not misinformation. It's real. I'm living it. Come live in my shoes. So to know that you're not alone, other people unfortunately are experiencing the same things as you. It's huge. And people like you that help advocate and support using your talents and your resources is amazing. So that is a big factor to know you're not alone. So thank you so much for coming on and doing this podcast episode with me. And, we had our recent premiere of our own documentary movie here in the US, and Follow the Silenced. And then we also, I'd heard about yours and I just recently watched it and it is amazing. So I encourage everybody, go watch it, go share it. Um, Especially anybody that has social media accounts, anything like that, share this as much as you can because we need to get the word out so we can talk about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work you've been doing and creating a platform like this to help everybody and just start and continue the conversation.
That's right. Thank you. Dean, thank you so much for joining me today and using your voice, your talents, and your lens to tell a story so many are afraid to speak about. Why can't we talk about this? Is more than just a film. It's a lifeline. It gives people like Michael and myself and you all, so many others, a face, a voice in this world that is often trying to silence us, along with shedding light on topics that need to be talked about. If you're listening today, please remember, visit raineymedia.com, link in the comments, to watch the full documentary, find out more information, and how to support Dean and his team so they can continue doing this critical work. You'll find those in the description below. Please share this episode, share the film, support the film, and continue this conversation because this is something we need to be talking about. So thank you again for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.